What's going on, everyone? I'm back, and with week 1 already in the books in the NFL and week 2 quickly approaching, as always, I've got my picks outright against the spread along with my locks of the week. So let's get right into it, and hopefully we will do a little bit better in week 2 as opposed to week 1. Kicking off week 2, we have got the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals, divisional battle on Thursday night, and both these teams sitting at 1-0. However, they got here in very different ways. The Ravens completely dismantled one of the worst teams in football in the Buffalo Bills, while the Bengals had to work for their win late versus the Colts. Now, to me, this game is going to come down to which defense performs better, because if I look at the offenses and I ask myself, which offense do I trust more? Honestly, I don't trust either offense that much. One is Joe Flacco, who looked like an MVP candidate versus the Buffalo Bills, but again, that was versus Buffalo. And the other is Andy Dalton, who again will have now a much tougher matchup defensively than what he saw versus the Colts. So for that reason, I do think the team that ends up making some more defensive stops and gets some more turnovers will win this game. I realize this game is on the road in Cincinnati, but I do like the Baltimore defense a little bit more, so I'm going with them outright. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, 20-17, something like that, and the final score will probably be by 3-point or 4-point separation. As far as the spread goes, it's plus half a point for the Bengals, so pretty much a pick'em game. I'm going with the Ravens here since, like I said, I do like them to go ahead and win by about 3 or 4 points. Next, we have another divisional game, this time in the NFC. Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. Panthers 1-0 after beating the Dallas Cowboys, while the Falcons are 0-1 after losing opening day to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now look, the Panthers were able to go ahead and grind out a victory versus the Cowboys, but we kind of saw their limitations, especially offensively. Now the loss of Greg Olsen is going to be a big one in my opinion. Also, Darrell Williams went down again. Both injuries looked bad, and that's going to take its toll on an offense that was already limited in my opinion. Now with the Falcons, they also incurred some losses on the defensive side of things, but look, ultimately, this game is going to come down to which team can put up about 24 points, because if the Falcons can do that, I don't think the Panthers are going to be able to put up more than 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, something like that. And ultimately, I see the Falcons just having more firepower in this matchup. It's a home game. These two teams usually split these divisional games, and at home, I give the Falcons the edge. So I like them outright. As far as the spread is concerned, Falcons are at -5.5. I do think they can go ahead, win by a touchdown, so I'm taking the over on the spread as well. Continuing on, we have got the LA Chargers at the Buffalo Bills, and look, I'm going to keep this one short and to the point. Both these teams are 0-1, but one of these teams is coming out 0-2 after week 2, and it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. I've said it before, I'll keep saying it, the Buffalo Bills are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, whether it's with Peterman, whether it's with Josh Allen. They don't have enough offensive talent. Defensively, they got crushed by the Baltimore Ravens. I thought they would be better defensively. They're not even that good. I gave them too much credit there. And then the Chargers, look, they went up against a talented team in the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be able to have their way with the Bills. I think Rivers is going to have a big day. I think that entire offense is going to have a big day. I think the Chargers defense is going to have a big day, so I like them to win outright. The spread is plus 7.5 for the Bills, and honestly, I would probably even take the Chargers on the spread if it was even at 14. So I'm taking the Chargers, with that being said, on the spread as well. Next, we have the Cleveland Browns at the New Orleans Saints, and both these squads had shocking results in week 1. The Browns went ahead, tied the Steelers, while the Saints lost to the Bucs at home, let up more than 40 points to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, the question is, which team had more of a shocking result? To me, it would be the Saints, because look, I didn't think that defense, those defensive woes that we had seen from a couple years back would necessarily be an issue in 2018. And maybe I'm too quick to judge here because it is only one game, but man, there were a lot of holes in that defense, and Fitzpatrick looked like Tom Brady in week 1. Now, when it all comes down to it, I do like Drew Brees in that offense more than that of the Cleveland Browns. I do think the Browns maybe have a little bit of a better defense, but in crunch time, I'm going to go ahead and take Brees 10 out of 10 times without a doubt. I like the upside of Tyrod Taylor. I do think this will be somewhat of a close game. I think it could potentially be high scoring depending on which Saints defense shows up, but I'll go ahead. I'll take the Saints at home. I don't see them starting 0-2. They're going to go ahead, get this victory. As far as the spread goes, -8.5 for the Saints. I do think that's a little bit high, so I am going to go ahead, hedge my bets, take the Browns because I could see this again, depending on which Saints defense shows up, being closer than some people expect. Moving on to another divisional matchup, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers, and I think this is going to be a great showdown here. Both these teams 1-0. The Packers maybe did it in a little bit more of a dramatic fashion, that 1-point victory versus the Bears, while the Vikings took care of business versus Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers. Now, on paper, I would have said, I'm going to go ahead, take the Packers, but that was if Aaron Rodgers was 100%. We all saw the limitations he had after he came back from halftime with that injury, and McCarthy is going ahead and saying he's not sure if Aaron Rodgers will play on Sunday. Now, look, I do think Rodgers will ultimately play, but the fact that he's not 100% most likely has me worried. I do think that Vikings defense is going to be able to smell blood and attack. They're better than that Bears defense, and offensively, they're sure as hell better than the Bears offense. They've got a better quarterback, they've got better wide receivers, they've got a better running back, and for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to the Vikings because with Aaron Rodgers likely not 100%, and that Minnesota Vikings defense being one of the best in the league, I think they have the edge, even though it's a road game. I like the Vikings to go ahead, squeak out a very close win. So I like them outright. As far as the spread is concerned, pretty much a pick 'em. Packers -0.5 point favorite. So for that reason, I'm taking the Vikings, obviously, on the spread. Next, we have the Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. Both these squads 0-1. Texans lost to the Patriots, no shame in that, while the Titans took about a year and a half to go ahead and lose to the Miami Dolphins. Now, there are some question marks with Marcus Mariota and his health after the hit he took in that game versus the Dolphins. Ultimately, again, I do think he will end up playing, but look, I like that Texans offense a lot more than I like the Titans offense. I think Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback. I think DeAndre Hopkins is one of the top wide receivers in the league. I like Lamar Miller more than Henry or Dion Lewis. And ultimately, I like that Texans defense, which kept them in the game for the majority of that game versus the Patriots more than the Titans defense. So I like the Texans to go ahead, win this game on the road outright. As far as the spread is concerned, Tennessee Titans at +2.5. I do think the Texans are going to be able to win by around a touchdown, so I like them on the spread. Next up, we've got the Indianapolis Colts at the Washington Redskins. Colts 0-1 after losing to the Bengals. Redskins 1-0 after beating the Cardinals. And look, with the Colts, I think we saw what the main problem for that team will be going forward, and that is that defense, which is going to go ahead and allow even troubling offenses to go ahead and put up some points. Now, I do think that Cincinnati offense is a good one, and what we saw from Alex Smith and the Redskins in that running game, I think they can have similar success. Now, the Colts, the positive side here is they looked good offensively. Andrew Luck reinserted in that lineup, looked good, looked healthy. The guys were hitting on the majority of their cylinders. That running game does have me concerned. But overall, I think the Redskins are more balanced, especially when you take into consideration the defensive side of things. Alex Smith doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I think Jordan Reed is going to have a big game here versus that defense. I think they're going to throw it around a little bit more, so I don't anticipate as much of a workload for a guy like Adrian Peterson. I think the wide receivers for the Redskins are really going to have a big game here, so I like Washington at home to go ahead, beat the Colts, mainly because of their defense. And as far as the spread goes, Redskins -5.5. I do think, again, it'll probably be a close game, so for that reason, I do like the Colts to go ahead, hang tough here, make it a grind-out type of game, and to go ahead, cover the spread on their end. Looking at another AFC matchup, we have got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Chiefs 1-0 versus the Chargers, got that first victory, looked very impressive, led by Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Heck of a combination. A little bit concerning, Kareem Hunt wasn't really that much of a factor, but I do think as the season goes, he will get going. Now with the Steelers, well, they probably should have won as well, but they did everything in their power to go ahead and throw away that possibility in what ultimately ended up being a tie versus the Browns. Now, on the positive side, I do think James Conner looked really good. I don't think that running game has too much to worry about. He looked great as a wide receiver, as a pass catcher, I should say, as well. And with my anticipation of not having this game in week 2 suffer storming conditions throughout like what the Steelers saw in week 1, I think that it'll be more of an aerial show for them versus the Chiefs. And ultimately, when it comes to those offenses, because I think that's how this game will be decided, I give the edge to the Steelers. They just have more playmakers. I like Antonio Brown more than Tyreek Hill. James Conner looked better than what Kareem Hunt did, but mostly Big Ben over Patrick Mahomes, even though Patrick Mahomes looked like the real deal in week 1. I think it'll be a close game, but ultimately I like the Steelers, probably a 2 or 3 point margin of victory. I like the Steelers outright. The spread is -5.5, so a little bit too high for me. For that reason, I'll take the Chiefs there. Next, we have another AFC divisional matchup with the Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. Both squads 1-0, but I think the way the Jets got there was a lot more impressive, considering Sam Darnold comes out. His first NFL pass is a pick 6, but then he comes back, dusts himself off, and has a hell of a game. Now, he didn't have to be lights out considering how well that defense played, went ahead, made Matthew Stafford look like Nathan Peterman out there. That D-line kept getting pressure. The linebackers looked good. I love what Jamal Adams can do in the secondary. Their special teams had a touchdown as well. They were hitting on all cylinders. And look, honestly, at this point, I have a little bit more trust in the playmakers the Jets have than the Dolphins do. I think that long game is going to take its toll on the Dolphins. And ultimately, that offense for the Jets, I think, again, has more playmakers with Quincy Enunwa. I've been high on him all off season. Robbie Anderson returns. I like that pair of wide receivers more than what the Dolphins have. And I do think the Jets defense is also better. They'll have that home crowd behind them. So I like them to go ahead, win this game outright. If Sam Darnold does what he did on Monday night, I think it'll be a victory for the Jets. As far as the spread is concerned, -2.5 for the Jets. I'll go ahead, I'll take the over. I think they can win by at least a field goal. Moving on, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Both teams at 1-0, but the way the Bucks did it was more impressive here. Let's be honest, going into New Orleans, beating the Saints with Ryan Fitzpatrick looking like an MVP, putting up 40+ points, one of the biggest shocks of week 1. But the question is, will Fitzpatrick be able to duplicate that kind of performance week in and week out while Winston is gone? And unfortunately, I don't think he will, especially considering now he faces that Eagles defense that we know is for real. And even though this is a home game for the Bucks, look, defenses travel well, and that Bucks defense also let up a bunch of points as well. Let's not forget that. So I do think Nick Foles will have his opportunities. And even though this might be a low-scoring game, when it's all said and done, I think that Fitzpatrick is going to get forced into some turnovers, and ultimately that's going to lead to the Eagles getting this victory by about a touchdown. I like them to win outright. The spread is +3.5 for the Bucks, and since I do think it'll be a touchdown kind of game, I'll take the Eagles to go ahead cover the spread. Keeping things going, we've got the Detroit Lions at the San Francisco 49ers, both teams 0-1, but with the Lions, that loss was a lot more devastating for that team because they just looked awful. Now, Matthew Stafford couldn't get it going, couldn't stop throwing interceptions. That defense couldn't stop the rookie Sam Darnold. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is much better than Darnold. Now, obviously, I don't expect that same type of performance for the Lions, but at least the 49ers in their loss, they were competitive up until the end of the game. They could still tie it up late in the fourth quarter versus the Vikings, who have a great defense. And even though I'm a big fan of Matthew Stafford, ultimately, as crazy it sounds, I think this game comes down to coaching, and I have more faith in Shanahan than I do with Matt Patricia. I like what he's going to be able to draw up, this being a home game for the 49ers. I'll take the 49ers in a very close game here. As far as the spread's concerned, -5.5 for the 49ers. And like I said, I do think this will be a close game. I think it could be potentially very high scoring. I'll take the Lions to go ahead, however, and keep things close on the spread. Moving on, we have another divisional matchup. Arizona Cardinals at the LA Rams. Cards 0-1, Rams 1-0. And with the Rams late in that game versus the Raiders, they really flexed their muscles defensively, had some key stops, some key interceptions, while offensively they were pretty balanced as well. Gurley had a big game like we would expect. Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks had nice performances, while the Arizona Cardinals, I did expect a little bit more, especially defensively. I thought that they would be able to limit some of the things the Redskins would try and do. I expected better things from Sam Bradford and David Johnson. I really think that Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald could have been utilized better. Now, they get a tough matchup here at LA, and usually these NFC West contests are pretty low scoring and can yield themselves to some big upsets. But look, I'm going to go ahead and give the Rams, on paper, the Rams should absolutely win this game. It could be a little bit, closer than we anticipate. I'm going to save that prediction, though, however, for the game that's in Arizona. So for that reason, I like the LA Rams outright for sure. As far as the spread is concerned, well, the Rams are minus 12.5 favorites at home. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to go ahead, take the over. I wasn't really that impressed by the Cardinals in week 1. And I think the Rams are, especially defensively, going to cause a lot of troubles for the Cards in this game. Continuing the divisional matchup train going, we've got the Oakland Raiders at the Denver Broncos. And even though the Raiders are 0-1, I think they played better than what that final score would indicate. Unfortunately, they couldn't get their wide receivers going to save their lives. That's why they kept targeting guys like Jared Cook and Jalen Richard, because they were the only pass catchers that could do anything. And defensively, I actually think the Raiders did all right. They limited the Rams to field goal attempts for the majority of that game. It's just that they got worn out towards the end in the fourth quarter. Now, with the Broncos, I think they had a pretty balanced performance. Offensively, Case Keenum looked good, and Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas looked more like themselves than what we saw last year. Defensively, they had a good outing as well. But keep in mind, it was versus a completely revamped and new Seattle Seahawks team from what we've grown to see and expect with them. However, this game is in Denver. I do expect to see some of that home field advantage. And I think when it comes down to it, I'm going to give the edge to the Broncos, primarily because of what they can do defensively. And on paper, I like them to win outright. As far as the spread goes, minus 5.5. I'm going to go ahead and give the Raiders the edge here on the spread. I think they're going to keep it close, but ultimately end up losing by right around 3 or 4 points. Moving on, we have got a playoff rematch from last year. New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both squads 1-0. The Patriots were impressive in their win versus the Texans. The Jaguars, couldn't quite separate themselves from the Giants late in that game, but they still got the victory. Definitely think the Patriots were more impressive in their victory. And here, it's going to come down to the Brady versus the Jacksonville defense. Because, look, let's be honest, Blake Bortles isn't scaring anyone. Leonard Fournette might not be 100%. I still expect him to play. But the Jaguars are limited offensively with what they can do. So the question is Brady going to be able to do enough and score about 15 or 20 points? Because I think that's all the Patriots need to go ahead and beat the Jaguars. And ultimately, I do think that Brady will be able to do that. So I like the Patriots to go ahead, win this game. I think it'll be a close one. Outright, I like the Patriots. On the spread, Jags are at plus 2.5. And I'll actually be right around that mark. I think the Patriots win right by around 3 points. So I will take the Patriots on the spread. Moving on to Sunday night, we have got a matchup of two familiar foes. NFC East clash, Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Both squads in 0-1. And starting with the Cowboys first, man, I have a lot more question marks here and concerns because especially offensively, the Cowboys looked like they were in trouble. Look, first of all, it starts with the amount of carries that Zeke got versus the Panthers. Only 15 carries. That game wasn't out of hand where they should have abandoned the run that much. Zeke should be getting a minimum of 20 carries per game. He is that vital to that offense. They go as he goes. And defensively, we saw some good things, but I will say in large part, I think that was because Carolina is limited offensively. I think the Giants have more firepower offensively than the Panthers do for sure. And I will go ahead and say I also like what the Giants showed defensively in week 1. I realize it was against Blake Bortles, but neither of these teams, are elite teams in my opinion as of right now. But overall, I like what the Giants have more. I think they're the better offense. And defensively, I think they match up well enough with what the Cowboys showed us in week 1. I hope the Cowboys make some adjustments for their sake, because if they don't, I think this one could be a blowout. I like the Giants to win outright. On the spread, Cowboys are actually favorites at minus 2.5, so I'll take the Giants on the spread. Finally, we have our Monday night contest, the Seattle Seahawks at the Chicago Bears. Both teams 0-1. But definitely more devastating for the Bears in their loss because they saw Aaron Rodgers return from injury, orchestrate another comeback, and do what he does best, and that is beat the Chicago Bears. That's unfortunate because the Bears actually looked pretty good in that first half. That defense, led by Khalil Mack, man, Khalil Mack is the real deal. He was worth every single pick that the Bears gave to the Raiders, and it was just hard to see because that defense ran out of gas as the game went on, and the offense wasn't able to go ahead and carry the load for them. Now, with the Seattle Seahawks, what we saw week 1, they're not in the league defense anymore, but I still think they have that X factor, and that is Russell Wilson. Even without Doug Baldwin, I think Brendan Marshall and Tyler Lockett will be able to do enough offensively. I like Chris Carson as well, and I got to give them the edge here. I think we're going to see a similar situation, that Bears defense kind of runs out of gas, and Mitchell Trubisky is not going to be able to do enough because, let's be honest, the Bears aren't going to be winning games because of Mitchell Trubisky. They're going to win games because of that run game, because of that defense, but Trubisky's not that kind of quarterback that can shoulder the load and lead your team to victory because of what he does. So for that reason, I like the Seattle Seahawks. I think I wouldn't be surprised if I see a similar situation with the Bears. They go up, but then they just can't hold on. Seattle Seahawks win close. So I like them outright, the Seattle Seahawks, to go on the road, beat the Bears. On the spread, Bears are actually favored -3.5. Since I like the Seattle Seahawks, it's an easy one for me on the spread. So with that, we finish up our pick'em games. Now let's look at our locks of the week, starting with the Chargers at the Buffalo Bills, where you have to go to the Chargers. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be picking against the Buffalo Bills pretty much every single week, as not only in my pick'em, but as my locks of the week until they show us otherwise. It's as simple as that. Then moving on to the Cleveland Browns at the New Orleans Saints. I'm going with the Saints here. I don't see them starting out 0-2. I think they're going to make some needed adjustments after the loss they suffered to the Bucs. I think offensively they're going to be able to do enough and separate themselves from the Browns as well. Then finally, the Arizona Cardinals at the LA Rams. Give me the LA Rams. The Cards were struggling against the Washington Redskins. The Rams are on another level than the Redskins. I think they're going to be able to dominate this matchup defensively especially. And with that, we finish up our locks of the week and this video. So as always, let me know what you guys thought. Did you agree with these picks? If you have any questions, let me hear it in the comment section as well. And as always, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.